Sorry for the inconvenience. Now, before I talk about this particular thing, that what is the role of pharmacist in the international platform in fighting the pandemic in COVID-19? As a pharmacist or as a pharmacy education, the students who are in the pharmacy education, by the end of this presentation, I'm confident that I'll be able to convince you that whatever you have the idea about pharmacy, you will be walking out of this presentation with a different concept. What a pharmacist or as a pharmacist you can do. I'll give you different stage by stage platform, what are being done at the international level and what are being done at the research level. So when I consider pharmacist, I consider more of a scientist rather than a healthcare provider, because healthcare provider, yes, you will be working as a healthcare provider, but the world sees the pharmacist much beyond that one, particularly clinical pharmacy. At this point, clinical pharmacy work. Now what I will try to do is that I'll try to correlate between the pharmacy, what we learn in the pharmacy, and how we integrate this information or the knowledge in the system of the healthcare these days. What I typically say is that, are we prepared for next pandemic? Yes, this pandemic is happening, and we know, we learn from our experience. And many of you, if you have, of if you know who is Bill Gates. Few years back, about I think it's in August 2005, he gave a talk in the TED show. He was talking about, he came with a bucket and he talked about, are we prepared for the next pandemic? I don't know, he got up from the bed and whether he realized, okay, there might be another pandemic coming soon, or maybe he was like, as we know, he's a great philanthropist. So he knew that, okay, when he is working with the, since his retirement from the Microsoft, he is sorry, or since his required from retirement from Windows, he's working with lots of NGOs, non-government organizations. He understands the critical point of the healthcare. But I particularly focus on, are we prepared as the education provider for the next pandemic? Can we do any, or is there any changes required in the curriculum or the knowledge that is given to the pharmacy students or the medical students or any other students to be prepared for the next pandemic? Because the life what we're living now, it is much different than 6-7 months back. November, December last year 2019, the COVID started coming up from China, and thereafter it spread to the different part of the world. And probably since March or April, March of 2020, the life has taken a 360-degree swing, or 180-degree, whatever you want to call it. We are not living the same life what we are living in probably February or 4-5 months back. It has, we have got new norms of life, but similarly have, because we have adapted, everything is online, you do social distancing, everything, depending on, like, just for sake of not getting contaminated with this deadly virus. So what are the changes, or how can we adapt with the curriculum, with the keeping the pandemic in mind? Before I move to the pandemic, let me just give you where were we with the COVID-19. This information, what I'm going to present in next 2-3 slides, is nothing new for you. If you're watching news, if you're watching WhatsApp, like I won't, like everybody who is watching WhatsApp and everybody who watches Facebook and here and there. But I will try to give you the most scientific information which are published in the peer-reviewed journals, or very much resources which are authenticated. I will try to compare between the worldwide to India, or more focused towards India, and then we will try to see what are the development and where the pharmacist can play a role. And as I said that, You will be surprised at the end of the day. What can we do? The first slide, let's talk about world where we stand now. If you see over here, there are two pictures which are given side by side. On the left hand side, we have number of total cases. On the right hand side, the active cases. Is given the intensity, the heatness, you can see the more towards red, it is high, and as we go towards peach color. We very well know that the leading country is USA, but you may be surprised, or if you are following the news, you may not be surprised. Brazil is coming up the new evolving country, or a country which is a lot of new cases from the South Africa country. South America, basically, this is the Brazil which is coming up a lot. Here we are in India, and Russia is also emerging. Before I go to compare much more epidemiological information, let me talk about where are we with the number of cases. For selected countries, this is given with the date, particularly what is happening. Since the first, when the corona cases was recorded last year in China, like this COVID-19 coronavirus has spread around the world and has been declared a pandemic by World Health Organization. And however, the difference what we see over in testing mean that the number of cases may be understood in some countries. US has been leading it, Brazil is coming up, and this is the number of confirmed cases of the COVID-19 in the selected countries. You will be surprised, you will not see India over here, because depending upon where the number of cases are started counted, this is basically after the 100 cases. This is the confirmed deaths. Okay, we are talking about 100,000 over here. This is the scale is in 1 million, so don't be surprised with it. The scale always will be, when we present the epidemiological data, we will be very careful with the number on the y-axis and the x-axis. Okay. Now this is with the time, and this is with the number of cases, and what we see over here, there are different. These developed countries are having much more cases, active cases, or the cases. What is it? Let's see, where does India start from? Now here is the India, which is about 4.52%, which, like as of the recent information what I heard, 395,000. Soon we will be reaching to 400,000 cases, active cases, distribution cases. If you look at the total world map, this is the total world map, we are not even 10%. We are still only the less than 5%. Where developed countries like Russia, developed countries like USA and UK, they have much more cases. USA has been on the top of the list by always occupying about 1/4 of the total number of cases. This is the case distribution worldwide. Now let's focus on India. Daily new cases in India. I'm trying to particularly put the new cases, and if you look at the graph, it is basically 7-day graph what we give over here, 7-day moving average, and this line is in the 7-day moving average. And we are constantly, number of daily cases are increasing. There are various number of factors. People moving inside the country, people moving out from outside of the country to inside to India. All these things making a factor. So with this information, let me finish the epidemiological data with the where are we heading? Is the cure is overlapping or overtaking the death? What you see over on the bottom line is the death rate, and here is the recovery rate, that is for the world. This is the outcome of total closed cases. Closed cases are like how many cases have been completely closed, like the people have recovered either by complete recovery at the center, or unfortunately they could not be cured and they died. So these are the closed cases, whether completely recovered or disease cases. You see over there, initially we started with 50% cure rate and recovery rate, and we reached during the March when the cases were not many, then people are recovering. Then slowly, because it started declining, because the number of cases were increasing during that time. Then again, we are coming back to the same thing about 80% to 85% as now cases are being recovered. Death rate is still lying in between 10 to 15%. The same pattern is compared with the Indian cases. We do the same thing in the initially. We didn't have many cases in India. It all started during the early and the March. That's why when the number of cases increased, the cure rate decreased. Then again, when everything got little bit stabilized during the end of April, where the quarantine or the country was closed down, then the cure rate was increased, and inversely the same data was saying the death rate increased, and again we are coming back to it. You will be like, again you will be surprised to know that the India has very good rate of success of the treatment. Now let people are dying, yes, but not the number of people which are getting cured. That's being fundamentally very encouraging coming from the Indian side. Not only Indian scientists are successful, or Indian healthcare providers are able to keep the coronavirus patients out of the grid of the death, scientists are also playing a bigger role. Now, I again don't know, like if it had it been a face-to-face presentation, I would have been basically asking you one question. Do you know how often a pandemic occurs? People were thinking that okay, once in the last major pandemic was in 1800. Now, like now it is in like after 100 years. Now we are coming back. 18 late 1800, now 1900, now 2020. Different about after 100 years we get a pandemic. Let me give you the history of the pandemic. What we okay before that. Why am I talking about all these things? I thought that including government of India everywhere, everybody started talking about let's salute the heroes who are the healthcare providers and government of India, like unlike government of India, everybody started. If you the reason why I have this slide, this is the center person what I'm more interested. These are the scientists, and this is exactly the same place where you will be after completion of your program. Some of you, if you are an B.Pharm student, you may want to do the M.Pharm or any kind of higher education, or if you're M.Pharm, you may go to Ph.D, or you may want to start working for yourself, or B.Pharm student can start working, or PharmD students, you can start whatever your interest or
your interest or
okay. Now, what happens over there? As a pharmacist, you will be challenged if another pandemic happens in near future. You will be challenged to the same stage where other pharmacists are working. I know when I studied a B.Pharm, majority of my classmates are not doing as a pharmacist. They are people are working in different fields with a different specialty. Some of them are working as a clinical pharmacist, some of them working in the pharmacognosy, some of them are chemistry department. My specialization was M.Pharm in pharmaceutical chemistry, medicinal chemistry. What my friends which are in the pharmaceutics, they are heading very good department in a multinational organization. Friends are working in pharmacy, out of pharmacy, but everybody is related to healthcare. Some of them are directly or indirectly involved in the COVID-19 preparations, maybe a vaccine or the drugs. Now, when we talk about the pandemic, what we know so far, because as I say that history is the greatest teacher for us. Here is the history of the pandemics. History of the pandemic, as we see over here, like that's what I want to say. What we know so far, because as human, we have spread across the world, and so the infection diseases have. Even in the modern era, like at this modern age where you have everybody have gadgets, we have access to everything, outbreaks are nearly constant. As you see over here, The recent outbreak, what we are, this is like, if the slide is clear to you, this is 2025, this is 2000 and 1975. You can see between 2000 and 2020 how many outbreaks we had. If you know what happened to the swine flu, bird flu, SARS, Ebola, MERS, now we are COVID-19, and these are the number of deaths. And during between the just before 1975, we had the HIV, or HIV virus, which caused the AIDS, Asian flu, Hong Kong flu, all these things. What we are seeing, the nearly constant is also, as the human is spreading, outbreak is also spreading. And though not every outbreak what we had in past reaches the pandemic level as COVID-19, but this visualization, what it can tell you, that it will outline some of the history's most deadly pandemics. And from the beginning, what we have is an Antonine plague, which way back, which killed almost 5 million people that time. And what I have right now is the COVID-19 pandemic, which is almost killed 500,000, like many people by now. But now, let me give you this is the timeline of the pandemic, what we are seeing over here. Now, throughout the history, as like what we are seeing, as the human is spreading and all this outbreak is spreading, so disease and illness has plagued the humanity since the earliest days. Now, our mortal flaw is that we are not able to spread this outbreak. However, it was not until the marked shift in the agrarian communities that the scale of the spread of this disease increased dramatically. Now, widespread trades, like if you know that, okay, worldwide trades are there, very widespread, like every country is trading between other countries. So new opportunities for the humans are growing, and animal interactions that making it also worse for the epidemic or pandemic conditions, such as animal interaction, like maybe plagues also, like malaria, tuberculosis, leprosy, influenza, what about the pandemic, smallpox, all of them all of them were appearing in the very first years. The more the civilization what we become, the humans become, the larger the cities, the more exotic trade routes, or like maybe aeroplanes and ships or the water lines. You know that most of the pandemics are always discovered in the cruise or ship lines. Without population of the this is basically increasing without the population, animals and ecosystem. The likely pandemic will, like, as long as we have this kind of cross-country communications or reaching, the pandemic will happen. Now let's talk about the death toll. The highest death toll was seen in the in the year like 1300 and so, the Black Death. It's killed about 200 million people. But recently we're talking about the coronavirus, which is basically over here. The size is basically is a comparison of how many deaths has happened. We know that during March 11, 2020, the WHO declared COVID-19 as pandemic. Now, since then, a lot of things has happened, social distancing and all these things. Now, it is hard to calculate at this point of time and forecast the impact of the COVID-19, because the disease is new, medicine, it's like people don't know about this. We knew about the coronavirus. There is a class of virus called as coronavirus has been there, but the SARS-CoV, this particular, it has been very recently discovered. I will talk about much of this research soon, and the data are still coming in. We are talking about the data, we're reading the data and all the things. Now, scientists are using different basic measures to trade. Now, let me talk about some of these numbers. Okay, before that one, let me tell you something just to make it a little bit lighter for you. Somebody asked me, who declared the COVID-19 pandemic? Now, I'll leave the answer to you, or question to you, who you think of it. Okay, this is a epidemiological number, is basically is used as a R0 or R0. Scientists use this basic number to track the infectiousness, and as we see, as you can see over here, COVID-19, the infectiousness is basically 2.5. Okay, the measles was 16.0. So this number basically tells us how many susceptible person or people on an average can get sick from a infected person, and it will how many one infected person will infect how many normal person who doesn't have this. Well, measles the most which can cure infect about 18 of them, and it can go be as low as 1.5 for influenza, and MERS it is 0.8. But for the COVID, we know it is 2.5. That is the infectiousness what we know. Now it is hard to calculate and forecast the true impact of the COVID-19 right now. The outbreak is still growing, and the researchers are still learning the information. Now let's go to the pandemic as we understand the pandemic. Where from this pandemic, what we see over here, pandemic, is it from the bacteria or from the virus or both? If you know this one, then you can contribute a lot. This is very simple. I'm trying to give the information which is CDC, Center for Disease Control from USA. What can you use to treat whom? If it's a bacteria, you can give antibiotics also. Yes. But if it's for virus, you know that there is no antibiotics. As you can see over here, antibiotics needed. For bacteria, yes. For virus, no. That is the problem what we have for COVID-19. We don't have an antibiotic. We cannot have an antibiotic. So this is a common comparison between the bacteria and virus, and this is what the similar thing. What gets you sick? Now, what I'm going to do is I'll talk about a little bit of virus because we are going towards the COVID-19 slowly. I'll be focusing on what are the clinical trials and what are the different diagnoses of this one. This is a very simple description of all the viruses we have. It can be either helical, polyhedral, spherical, or complex, and we are talking about in the spherical this one. Here is the influenza virus, what we are more interested. Now, with all these things, let me take you towards what is the major role of a pharmacist in management of the any pandemic, and particularly in this case coronavirus. Now when you have a virus as a target, okay, what are the different molecular targets we can use for the prevention and treatment strategy for any kind of viral infection? Because that is going to be your blanket for all the virus treatment. You can have antibodies if you know a little bit about this one. Probably those students who are in the higher B.Pharm, you have taken the biotechnology courses or other molecular biology programs, you know what are about the antibodies or receptors. If you have finished the biochemistry, then you will know what are the receptors also. So antibodies are the soluble receptors which are present in the cells or the virus that can inhibit the viral entry. We're more interested in the, if you know about how the virus enters. This is the virus viral entry to the cell, and we can have antibodies to restrict the entry of the virus into the cells. So we can inhibit the entry of the virus to the cells. And there are with antisense, we have different type of approaches like antisense antibodies, or we have oligonucleotide ribozymes or siRNA short inhibitory RNAs which are paired with the complementary target genome. All of them we have over. We have siRNAs or different new modern molecular approaches are available. These will which will basically block the what we call as transcription and transcription of the cellular process, which is called a central dogma of molecular biology. What happens like from the gene to RNA to protein, what is called a central dogma, transcription and translation. If you can able to block that one, then we'll be able to because this RNA, this is, we know that COVID is an RNA virus. Then there are different enzymes like RNase-H, which can be given to cleave the RNA. There are also ribozymes which are possible to do the catalytic activity that can be targeted. Now, imagine Okay, when we had like last year 2019, we had, but it is about only 4 to 5 months we have understood a lot of information has come into. Now, since about 5 months after the first cases of like maybe let's for 6 months now, 5 to 6 months, the first we'll learn about the coronavirus, which is causing this pneumonia, causing like when the around December, China started publishing this one, the pneumonia type of infections is coming out, which we know that now it's a Wuhan virus from the Wuhan, China it started. About 90 vaccines are in study or in the clinical trials at the various stages of the clinical trials, with more being announced every week. It is becoming a game, or it has become a platform for the pharmaceutical industries to control the entire thing. You may, when you talk about the pharmaceutical economy or the pharma economy, when you read all these things, you will understand that how the world economy or the pharmaceutical economy controls the healthcare, whether it is in healthcare or is it insurance on different things. All these things are controlled by the pharmaceutical industries. You'll be surprised at the like after a couple of slides. I'll show you some of the information how this industries plays major role in discovery than any of the government organizations. Now, almost every week we are having new molecules are being tested, and there are, particularly from India, you know that Serum Institute of India, which is also collaborating with different universities and different organizations around the world in UK and USA to do the vaccine testing. At least right now, we have 6 of them being tested for the safety in people. Right now, with this information, let's go to what are the clinical trials we are having. And as I go on, I will tell you what, as a pharmacist, what is your future role in the pandemic if it comes, or how will it go. Now, this is the little bit recent information, how many cases of the COVID-19 clinical trials are going on right now. When candidate vaccine makes it to human trial, they first go to the phase 1, then phase 2, all these things you will be studying. When you go to the pharmacology classes, you will be studying all these things. And what I'm trying to show you over here, what are the different countries. This is United States. Okay, what are the countries? This is European countries, this is China, and some countries like we have in India, the vaccine development are happening over there. Now, what I'm going to show over there right now, these are the different approaches what is happening technically. Now, when a candidate vaccine makes in the clinical trials, they one trial, then primarily, then test the vaccine safety, then determine the doses, identify potential side effects. All these things in the clinical trials you will study. In a small number of people, it is done in phase 1. Phase 2, it is done in the much later. Right now, these are the 8 approaches what the scientists are trying to use to target the coronavirus. These are the now, this is most of them are basically targeted to improve the immunity of humans or human patient against the COVID virus. As I said, there are more than 90 vaccines are being developed and against the virus, and research teams are companies, universities across the world, they are researching, and 6 of them are into the. So here are the 8 different type of approaches what is being taken. These are the various approaches. All of these vaccines what we have now are aiming to expose the body to an antigen. If you know what is the antigen, if you have taken the microbiology classes, and I know that in B.Pharm on the 3rd year you have the microbiology classes. All of these approaches what we have now to generate the innate immunity by giving the antigen or an antigen to the person, which will not cause the disease. It won't cause the disease, because the virus can be either, as you said, it can be either inactivated or weakened, that it can have viral vector. So virus-based anti-vaccines are basically very less. more of the approach is towards the purified protein, the protein subunit or virus-like particles. What is being given over here, more of the approach is this one, or viral vectors. So most of the vaccine research is running around the protein subunit of the virus particles. There are at least 8 of these types are being tried at this time, and these are the different 8 of them: viral vectors, which are replicating, non-replicating, nucleic acids, DNA or RNA-based, protein-based, maybe subprotein, subunit, or virus-like particles, or virus test. Now, as I said that, if you see over here, private and industrial organizations are more than 3/4 of the contributor towards the research. Academics only do a little bit. Public and non-profit organizations are very rare. Typically, when it comes to the research, it will be on the exactly opposite side. Academics will be doing much more research. There are most of this research. Private and industrial organizations will be more interested towards the development of the drugs. Like once the drug is available to them, they will not be spending more money on the R&D. They'll be spending more on the F&D. You know, the research and development and formulation on the development, more towards the formulation. But right now, the front runner is who can develop the first vaccine, and that company will be billion, trillion dollar every day they will be earning once they get the vaccine. So it's a race now going between all the pharmaceutical organizations to get the first vaccine out. So the academics, they are not able to put a lot of money into it. Public and non-profit organizations have it. And at the same time, North America, the USA, is being the front leader. But we have number of developed. We can see that about 35 drugs or vaccine candidates are being into research. We have many coming from China, Europe, Australia, and other countries. And we have some of them coming from India. Now, those who are in the later B.Pharm, or those who are in the M.Pharm or Pharm.D, will understand what is a clinical trial. Clinical trial typically takes a very long time. The drug discovery, like pre-discovery and preclinical trials, is that which is basically 3 to 6 years. Then we have clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Okay. Now, when you have this, typically what happens? Thousands or 10,000s of people are being involved in the study. And drug discovery, preclinical. As you see over here, many number of compounds we start with 10,000 compounds, only one of them finish the study. And you see the timeline it takes is 3 to 6 years. That is much more important for me. The timeline takes 3 to 6 years, and for this is the preclinical, this is the clinical, is 6 to 7 years. When did we start talking about the coronavirus? Maybe November 2019, but most of the information started coming out February or March, April, May, June. 4 months, not even a year. And there are drug candidates or vaccine candidates are already into the phase 2, 3 clinics. Well, so now what happened? This is the study what has been done, or this is the framework what generally takes, whether it's in India government or Chinese government or whatever the countries over listed over here. Everything I know for sure, US FDA, Indian, it is different organization. Everybody at the clinic which controls the regulation of the drug, new molecule entity. Okay. Now, to have one drug coming to the market, let me take the minimum 6 plus 3, 9 years, 10 years it takes. Right now we are about 10 months, not even 10 months, 4 months we are talking about clinical trials. So this is where the pharmacists are playing a bigger role. Now clinical trials, okay, we will not be able to see the same thing after a few years. What happens now? Healthcare providers, maybe doctor, nurse, will be able to help them to survive. But unless until this pandemic will not go anywhere, unless until we find a vaccine or drug, that is where all the clinical trials, pharmacological studies, clinical pharmacology, pharmaceutic students, this is where I will say that more of the M.Pharm or the pharmaceutical chemistry people are involved. This is where the pharmacology people are involved. This is where most of the pharmaceutics people are involved. Marketing, sales, and I'm not forgetting the pharmacognosy, because most of the treatment, whatever we all talk about the clinical trials, alternative therapy is the key these days. Whether it is from the non-natural, natural or natural sources, pharmacognosy people will be able to identify the active molecule or the key ingredient. So there are different prospects of all the pharmacy branches for this development of the medicine or the vaccine, for whether it's M.Pharm biotechnology or if, I don't know if there are many. I know that there are different branches like chemistry, suitics, cognosy, ecology, marketing, or all of this. I think biotechnology, all of them. Or these days, many of them talk on informatics, molecular biology. All of this one will play role in some of this. This is not been controlled by anything else but only the pharmacy people. Many different all these big industries, whatever we say, as I said, that big industries, the private industry, all these things are pharmaceutical industry. What we are talking about, either are the molecular biology industry. This is where you must be preparing yourself to get acquainted with the information which is required. Clinical trials or the preclinical trials or the synthesis of the drug. Like, okay, if you know that recently dexamethasone, or one of the one of the steroidal drug, has been found to effectively cure or reduce the death of the coronavirus people. Again, so that is the role of the chemistry people. But once we do all these things, then it must be formulated, or it must be given the what I said, that clinical trials. So with this one, let me tell you where we are with the COVID-19 clinical trials. With the standard of care, okay, so see what I said there. Now these are the different drugs which are with the clinical trials. Number of clinical trials are being going on always. We know that remdesivir is an antiviral drug. Corticosteroids, dexamethasone is now coming to prove that to reduce the number of deaths, and that is this is the most cheapest therapy. Like hydroxychloroquine, probably you know that, okay, the WHO has withdrawn the use of hydroxychloroquine for emergency use in COVID patients. But we have some of the antibiotics, tocilizumab, or different different coronavirus medicine, traditional Chinese medicines, direct acting antiviral drugs, all of the drugs which are available. So this is where the COVID-19 clinical trials of the top 15 interventions. I'm only so, because more than that it will be out of this. Now this is where the clinical trials are there. This I'm using the clinical trials. So you can go and online track the clinical trial. In India, these are different centers, and I can see from here which are the different cities, Bombay or Delhi, or different metro cities where the clinical trials are taking place. Now, where we are with the clinical trials, this is where the expected completion of the date, and you can see that the date is in 2020. So some of the studies are expected to complete within we are far away from this. Right now we are in the month of the June. So we are much far. This is the 20th of June. We are much far over here. This is where it's going to, things are going to start. There are some of them are expected to start by July, August, September, and this is where the things are starting slowly. The clinical trials are being starting slowly. These are basically how many of them registered, and how many of them started, how many of them are about to start, and when they're expected to complete. When I say that expected to complete, I'm not telling the entire clinical program like the clinical trials. This one will be completed. It's only the few pages will be, as we talk about, page by page. And this is the expected enroll by the treatment. Hydroxychloroquine was being talk of the healthcare when many of the political leaders started advertising the hydroxychloroquine or so on. Then we talked about alternate therapy, azithromycin on different then plasma therapy. All these things came into. This is the expected outcome and number of total enrolled patients. So this is my takeaway information for regarding the clinical trial test. Please prepare yourself with the pandemic situation, because it's not only the healthcare providers like the doctors or nurses will be able to save only the patient. No, this will, you are the one who are going to the field or the industry to design those drugs. I know that I'm running a lot of time, but I will be little. I'll continue because I thought that I'll do some fair if I finish all the information. Here is an example of a vaccine trials which is going on in Australia. So just for a picture wise, I wanted to show you. That is the clinical trials I was talking about. Now I will talk about what are the specimen collection and the diagnosis. You may think that, okay, what a pharmacist has to do about that. Particularly in the COVID-19, I'm not going to talk about what the sample collection is doing, that everybody knows how it is done. But I'll be more focused on what the diagnostic tests are done. Let me go through all the diagnostic or different approaches to do the diagnostic test, and I will keep on focusing on how a pharmacist can use. The very commonly used this test is this, okay, is your nucleic acid amplification test, RNA detection. We know that coronavirus, the COVID-19 is an RNA-based virus. If you understand your molecular biology or biotechnology, then you can understand what is written over here. Nucleic acid amplification, if you know that what is an RT-PCR, real-time PCR, or then otherwise also reverse transcriptase PCR, people are able to identify the presence of the RNA virus in the human sample, biological sample, using different kits. Now, what is the role of a pharmacist over here? When you study all these informations, like in the molecular biology or the biotechnology, what's given over here, you can become a leading service provider if you know all this information. When I started doing Ph.D, probably I didn't know much about the real-time PCR, but when I was talking to some of my friends, they knew what is PCR. So one of my suggestions is that please pay focus on the molecular biology. Much more information is required of the new development text in the molecular biology. So if you understand this one, then we can know about what happened to all the tests. Like basically it's a regular confirmation of the test. This is very common. This result can be confirmed by the nucleic acid sequencing whenever nucleic acid. They particularly use three or four genes called N gene, E, S, and RDRP gene. And these genes, what is sitting over there, would be targeted, and using the instruments like this, we call it reverse transcriptase. This is applied biosystem estimation of different real-time PCR. You can use this. Now, what I'm showing over here is from the NCBI website. If you know a little bit about bioinformatics, you can go to the NCBI and download the reference genome sequence of the SARS-CoV-2. This is the SARS, like severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. That is what the COVID-19. That is the biological name or the scientific name. This is the sequence. Now we have sequence already available. So what people do, take the mRNA, sequence it, and match it with the deposited sequence. And match it if the RNA is available. Yes, RNA will be extracted, and it is basically, because this is a highly contagious disease, so either you have to use the biosafety level BSL-2 or 3. For research, sometimes they use 4, and sample should not be heated because RNA will degrade, then used for the RNA. Now, this is the reference genome I have shown. I will show you how a pharmacist can be using the information with the bioinformatics. You will be surprised how many reference sequence has been shown. Next slide, basically, let's say. So far, 8,059 entries have been made as of this morning. I pulled up. The first one came from China, which came in the 2019 December when the coronavirus. This is the reference sequence. This is the number. But if I click the number and it will go to the reference sequence. And this is only I'm showing the 14 of them. There are 8,000 sequences. This is the reference sequences. So basically, this is the reference sequence and 8,058 sequences which can be compared with the reference sequence, which is coming from the different city, whether it's Montgomery County, or the USA, California, or the Pierce County, or from the US, Washington State, whichever the different people collection dates. You can see the 2020 January, May, April, different dates they have submitted. So that's why I tell the sky is the limit with the information. If you go to the NCBI website, National Center for National Center for Bioinformatics, National Library of Medicine, National Institute of Health, Government of Gene Bank, if you go that, you can get the sequences. You can look yourself and you can. So it's basically, if we want, then we can get this information and get on. Now, what is happening now? As I said that there are three genes, which are basically N, E, S, and RQ. N, E, and RQ gene. This is being used, and this is the mostly used approach for the treatment or the detection. Many countries, many companies are now developing kits. Now, which one will you recommend? That is one of the real-time PCR. I'm going to compare the antigen-based immunity or antigen-based immunoassays. This has more than, I will look for the specificity, which is about 95%, sensitivity 95%, real-time PCR compared to the other test which I will be giving over here. The other test which is generally done, it's very easy to do, is serological testing, like based upon the principle of ELISA, enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, which will detect the immune response to SARS-CoV-2. We take the blood sample, drop it over here. That will be very simple, but we still have to go a lot of different, because if you see over here, there is the specificity is very low over antibody-based immunoassays. It's not antigen-based, antibody-based. Now we do patient with the sample with the SARS-CoV-2 antibodies will be taken and find out whether the antibody is present. We still have not gone to that, like how the other ELISA tests are done. Then we have viral sequencing. Just simply take the viral and sequence it. That or I will take the real-time PCR. Otherwise you can simply do the sequencing of the entire genome. There are DNA sequencer, RNA sequencer, whole genome sequencing is available. The different company called Roche, Abbott, or the Applied Biosystems, they have instruments for this. Viral culture. This is not typically. This is how it was identified. You can isolate the virus, or sample, culture it, grow it, identify it. But it takes much more time, because we have to do it in a very sophisticated, and it must have so much of information in the virology so that it will be able to identify. This is not typically done for the detection purpose, and this is done for more of the identification purpose. COVID-19, the IgG, IgM test, immunogen test. This is also, we are still yet to see this is simply like the pregnancy test or other test, like the blood clot test. We can do this test. This is far-fetched here. Electron microscopy can be done, but again, one of the very disadvantages of this one is that you must have the specialized equipment, electron microscope. This test, electron microscope, will probably help you to understand the three-dimensional structure of the coronavirus. It is not much used for the detection, but each of these tests, what I showed so far, for the real-time PCR with the pharmacy knowledge, or with the serological testing, you study biochemistry, you study microbiology, you study immunology, you study pharmacology, and so on. You should be able to, once you apply all this information, you will be able to do this or develop this test. I'm not going to do the test. I'm not interested in who will do the test. I'm only interested in the who will develop this test. Right now, we are worried about this, because once this kind of test is available, then the test can be done. Millions of tests can be done within weeks or months. Now, this is what I want to emphasize, that in the international platform, there are a lot of emphasis is been given by towards the pharmacist to develop this detection kit, do the clinical trials, or identify the molecules for the using the drug design approach or QSR approach or whatever different approach you study during your pharmacy. Identify new molecule, analyze the molecule, do the clinical trials, and sell it. You'll be surprised to know that there are many companies which have started producing the vaccines before it has entered to the last clinical phase, because they don't want to wait. If the the vaccine enters to the clinical trials, it is approved by the clinical trials. What they are going to do is to uh, to prevent the supply and chain demand. They are keeping the millions of doses of the vaccines ready at their hand. If it reaches to the phase 3 clinical trial and it approves, they will immediately release it, and thinking to prepare probably about billion dose of vaccine maybe mid of next year to supply throughout the world so that everybody gets it. Okay, that's about the testing. Okay, before I wrap up my presentation, I also want you to put a thought towards the new approaches. As a pharmacist, how can you use different or the adequate approach? Everybody, you probably know about the word artificial intelligence. Some of them you may know the word called machine learning. How it is important. Now, what you see these days, many research are going on, as many research or as many studies are being carried out, much more data are being generated. The more the data, it is more severe to analyze. It's not like simply you can use an Excel sheet, you can analyze it. We have much more bigger data platforms are available these days. So another take home message for me: please prepare yourself to understand the use of artificial intelligence. Because of scope of the time, I will not talk much about artificial intelligence, but with a one story only I will stop it. There is a company called Blue Dot, okay, which started predicting since in the beginning of the coronavirus. It's like way back in like we said now, way back now. Sorry, December 2019. They first read an article, and it automatically detected an article that pneumonia type of disease is being reported in China. Before the World Health Organization could predict which will be the most hit areas, this artificial intelligence driven platforms were able to detect or identify those cities about 8 days in advance before the WHO could recommend it. Now, if at this point you know that 8 days is much more longer time, because many people, if you can predict, okay, this city is going to be worstly hit, then you can prepare it accordingly. Like it's something like a monsoon warning. Okay, after 3 days, Kerala will be hit by monsoon. So if we tell that, then like recently what happened, you saw that Bombay was about hit by monsoon. No, okay, they warned it. Okay, everybody was safe. Similarly, these artificial intelligence driven platforms are available these days to predict what will the spread. They'll analyze the information. They read lots of automatically. It reads the machine reads the informations in the different journals, newspapers. Automatically translate. That doesn't necessarily to be English. It can from Chinese or Korean or Russian. It translate and extract the information and predict where are we going to be or what is going to happen, and it is analyze the data. This is going to be the future, and pharmacovigilance, pharmacointelligence is going to play a bigger role, because to identify the drugs or identify the clinical trials, which drug is going to be studied over here, which basically using the artificial intelligence. You know that artificial intelligence is very common these days. You may be watching lots of videos here and there. Like if you have an Apple phone, you can the Apple phone started launching. If you are using it will ask you a few questions, and it will tell you that whether you are susceptible to this one or you should do the test or not. All of them are basically taking information of the locally, regionally, and all. So that is my take home messages, and with that one, I will conclude my presentation, and I'll leave it open for questions anybody wants to ask me. Mr. Anbu, over to you.
Yes, sir.
I'll be happy to take any questions unless until I put you to sleep. Just let me tell you who are listening. My clock is 12:41. It's a big phone. I'm having issue there. Students, students, if you have any doubt, please ask our research person. Just for information, no question is
Sir, yes,
yes.
sir, Professor Satyajit Patra, sir. This is Dr. English, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Sir,
I can hear you.
sir, can you hear my voice, sir?
I can hear you.
Hello.
Okay, there is a question which came up by
Sir,
name. Question was how coronavirus affect the medical research water. Coronavirus aren't that it is not waterborne, it is not airborne. That means that it cannot transmit from one person to another person through water or through air. So the only one way it transmits is by the biological droplets. When somebody sneeze or handshake or done anything where the biological fluids is contaminated, virus can carry. It does not survive without the host for a very long time. So if it is present in water or in the soil, it is not going to contaminate it. So that is one probably good thing about this virus, that it will not be staying on the solid ground or in the water ground for a very long time. If I answered your question, so we are safer on that.
Sir, thank you for your nice presentation, sir. I have a question, sir,
Yes. Yes.
regarding higher studies and research opportunities. So, can you elaborate the possibilities of higher studies in US for our students?
Okay, depending upon where the student is. Like when I was B.Pharm student, I wanted to go to US for the higher study. But again, you have to understand what are the primary criteria required to go for the higher studies. You must have two exams. One is GRE, because we are not mother language, mother tongue. So we have to test the TOEFL English, test test of foreign English language, whatever. Test of English as foreign language, TOEFL, and GRE. These two exams are mandatory to go to any of the US university to do the doctorate program. After PharmD, you can go for the PhDs, which is little bit easier to, not easier, but same. You have to go through almost same procedures. It's only after PhD it becomes a little bit easier to go. But if anybody who is interested, I know I have helped, like when I was teaching in India from Manipal, or many of my students, they went to US to do higher studies. It is not an impossible task, but one has to prepare from the day one. When you want to, you have to prepare for yourself for the GRE and TOEFL, otherwise you cannot do. There are some schools these days are taking without GRE, but you have to watch fully, or you have to carefully look out to this one. Those are the only options right now. but many US universities are ready to accept Indian students because of the intelligence level is much more higher than the other students, or the knowledge level is much higher. There are, there are much more possibilities.
Sir, there is another question in the chat box. How to be prepared for next pandemic?
That is what I was trying to tell. How to prepare, how to take it. My focus was how do we prepare ourselves. Like we have to understand how the pandemic happens. Number one, that's why I was talking about the epidemiological statistics. Number one, we have to prevent the spreading. We cannot stop the spreading because people will be traveling. Once the people or animal are the carrier, in this case, people are the carrier. People travel from one place to the other place, they will contaminate. So the key point is how to prevent the or like how to quarantine this. Second thing, we cannot stop a pandemic. That's basically beyond our control. But how quickly we'll recover from a pandemic, that is the question. Until February, March or April, people were not ready towards the spending money towards the everybody put not money towards the healthcare research. Many of them were only thinking, oh, uh, software or everything. Right now, nobody is interested in software. And everybody is worried about when the drugs or vaccine will be released out. So, well, like all the CDC or basically all the NIH or depend respiratory disease control, all of them are trying to focus on a vaccine research or to keep the vaccine research such a running way. Whenever there is a pandemic available, so people will be able to isolate. Like most of the time, it is virus. That's how it spreads. So we will be able to get the virus information and will be able to identify the vaccine. It's like a month predicting monsoon. All the equipments we have to keep it ready so that when there is a pandemic, and I don't want to be politically wrong. Some countries have to come out like come out more proactively to inform the other country mates. Okay, we are having a pandemic and get prepared. Like how it happened with some of the Asian countries this time.
So there is another question in the chat box.
Trust me, I was surely prepared for this one. Asking many of them, asking the what do you call it,
Highest
professional questions like whether what should be fit. The question is, sir, if pharma MBA is useful. I'll be honest with you. I wanted to do MBA after pharma, and it is one of the branches, but it depends upon you where you want to go. I from the day one I entered B.Pharm, I wanted to do Ph.D. So my focus was clear. Like I want to do M.Pharm immediately after M.Pharm. When I finished B.Pharm, I got into Manipal school. You know, everybody probably knows Manipal. I did M.Pharm over there. I wanted to study M.Pharm. I wanted to study Ph.D. So but if you are want to go to the pharmaceutical industry, particularly towards the marketing and sales, or another very like this MBA or this is pharmacovigilance or particularly clinical trials or writing all this document or all these branches, that is getting much more attention. Anything is good, anything is much more successful as long as you are interested in that. Okay. I was very good in chemistry. I took chemistry, but if you are interested in to go into the MBA, be be more than graceful to accept that. Okay, I want to do MBA, and you want to do MBA. Many people are right now in the bigger organization. My friends who are done B.Pharm after that MBA, they're doing very well. Like some of them are placed in USA over here. We are having master communication. Yes, they're doing good. It's But if you want to do MBA, then I would suggest that do it from a very good college where the MBA is reputed college. I will not simply tell you to do it from the no disrespect to the online courses, but try to enroll yourself for a program which is much. If you want to go to US, there are so many institutions in USA also which are of which you can do it MBA over there. MBA will be very good. Like I would never hesitate to do MBA. You can ask me anything. I'm free. I'm available for you. Ask. I've seen many students, many of my B.Pharm classmates are doing done MBA and doing perfectly fine, both in industry and not necessarily always you will land up in pharmaceutical industry. Always please understand this one. What you study over here, it is not always that you will be practicing. I teach biochemistry these days. I I was not sure what like during pharmacy I'll be doing, but as I grew towards PhD, when I did a PhD in molecular biology, I knew that I was enjoying my molecular biology, so I took it. So there is nothing like no branch is bad. Okay, how it is replicating in the body, coronavirus. I have a slide for that, but if you want to go back, but basically you have to understand the biology of the basic molecular biology of microbiology. You have to understand. Virus cannot survive or virus cannot replicate without a host. Virus always need a host.
Sir, sir.
There are very simple. There are two types of virus: RNA virus or DNA virus. Not many DNA viruses are pathogen. RNA virus, whether it's hepatitis or it's HIV or HPV, human immunovirus, immunodeficiency virus, that HIV, human papilloma virus, HPV, or hepatitis. All this HPV causes hepatitis also, hepatitis B, C, or whatever. Or now we are talking about COVID-19. All of them are RNA viruses. Their genome is RNA. RNA will not multiply itself. So what it does, it enters to the host cell. RNA is converted to something called as cDNA or complementary DNA using an enzyme reverse transcriptase. Now that enzyme DNA will be now converted to or that will give protein, not converted. Sorry, there will be protein in the presence of the human structures. There are three different major proteins that are like reverse transcriptase or the packing virus. Then they encapsulate themselves in the cell and then go back. If you are still seeing my screen, let me show you. This is how the virus replicates. Yeah, they go inside. This is the virus enter to the cell. They replicate. They integrate into the human genome, and they make RNA. They make protein, and they rupture the host cell, and then they multiply. That is the. By then, the human can eat. It is a virus which you have written the vaccine. It will probably body will have immunity. Otherwise, you will not be able to. That's why the plasma therapy is very much important these days, because it gives you, it synthesizes the antibodies, or you are giving the antibodies to the patients. If student any questions, okay, let me.
Thank you, sir. Patra sir, can you hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Sir, yes, sir. Sir, thanks for your wonderful and informative presentation, sir. On behalf of our management, hereby express my wholehearted thanks to you and your management for giving us such a wonderful and informative presentation. Sir, one more request, sir. In future also, let's have a good collaboration.
Sure, sir.
For the betterment and development for our students' career, sir.
Anytime, sir. You have my
In
email
this
ID.
occasion, we are expecting your cooperation and
My email
support.
ID. You can pin out an email to me. I'll be
Sure,
happy.
sir. Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay then. So with that, may I take your permission to leave?
Please, sir.
Okay. Thank you.